to start the early AM that with Good Morning Sri Lanka. I'm your host, Jason, and of course, Anupama's in here with me today.
Hello.
Midweek.
Yes.
It is Wednesday.
Yes.
How's the week been so far for you?
Good. It's been a good week.
Weekend roundup?
I've been dancing as usual.
Dancing.
Yes.
I'll tell you what's really bothering me today in Sri Lanka. It's the heat.
Yeah.
I spent this past week traveling in Trishas and it really affected me so badly. So today, my recommendation to you is find yourself a place that has an AC and stand under it.
Or don't go outside during the daytime like Jason does.
Or don't do that.
Because it's pretty cool in the evenings, you know?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
The drizzle, that kind of, it's not a well-balanced weather, I'll give you that. Sorry, Sri Lanka.
It's Colombo, so it's unpredictable. It's always unpredictable.
Yeah. Today's show is going to be about zero tolerance for gender-based violence.
Yes.
That's interesting. What? I believe our first guest, we kick off the show with?
Yes, with Dr. Harindu T. Vijayasinghe, who is a rheumatologist and who is also a sports medicine specialist. And he has been on the show before, so in case that you missed out that show, we have him once again on Good Morning Sri Lanka. Welcome.
Good morning
Sri Lanka, Doctor.
Good morning.
Good morning. So are you a morning person?
No, not a very good morning person, but
Okay.
We can see that.
Drag yourself out of bed. All right, so Jason.
We're here to speak about sports injuries. All right, so what are sports injuries? What sort of sports injuries are the most common that you get here in Sri Lankan sports?
yeah, we see a lot of different types of sports injuries.
Right.
Mainly related to the sports that we play, and cricket, rugby, going on to athletics and the other sports. And the commonest injuries, I would say, are based mainly the knee, the shoulder, the ankles.
Right.
Those are the commonest injuries that we see based on the specific joints that are involved.
Right. Let me ask you this now. I just watched the rugby matches that were just a few
we were
months
just
back.
discussing the Blacks win.
What's so interesting is it rugby players that get injured the most of all the sports that we play here in Sri Lanka?
The rugby players get the worst injuries.
The worst injuries?
The worst injuries meaning things like completely ruptured ligaments, especially the knee ligaments.
Wow.
That's where we see the most number of, say, ACL, where the biggest ligament in the knee ruptures. Whereas when you take cricketers and all, we see the more chronic overuse injuries because it involves a lot of repetitive motions.
Right.
So you do get both types from both sports.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So you mentioned two types of injuries, right? Acute and chronic sports injuries.
Yeah.
What is the difference between those two?
It's a time duration. Acute injury will usually come on very suddenly with a severe injury, say a sudden ankle twist or a sudden break in a ligament in the knee. Whereas a chronic overuse injury will it comes over some time. There you get accumulation of what we call microtrauma, small tears, which may lead to one big event, which may suddenly present as a acute on chronic one, or maybe as a chronic niggle. So it's all on the time duration of how long the athlete had the injury.
So during the first initial stage of having a chronic injury, does the is the player aware of it? I mean, you were mentioning there were small breakages of the ligament, and then it goes into the major injury. So are they aware of it? Does the pain really occur during the first stage?
Yeah, in the first stage you will get like a niggle.
Okay, but do people neglect that?
It all depends on how much you're close to competition and whether you're forced to play.
Yeah.
And so most of them are forced to play if it's during a competition with a niggle.
Yeah. Especially those, well, I'm guessing it's obviously the crowd that cheers them on, like, go on, injure yourself for us. All right, let's pretend this scenario. I'm playing cricket, right? I'm playing cricket, driving down 4 sixes. Let's just pretend.
No, I'm just asking. Do you actually play cricket? Okay.
No, well, I used to under 13.
Alright.
So I'm whacking fours, I'm whacking sixes, and an injury occurs. Maybe my arm. What's the first thing that I should do if I do get injured? While I'm on the sports field?
Yeah, actually in acute injuries we have a mnemonic for it, we call it RICE. It's very easy to remember. The first thing they say if you have acute injury is to rest that affected area.
Right.
So if you're batting, that would mean if you have a really bad injury to stop and come off. And then the I stands for ice.
Okay.
Now, when you have an acute injury, there is a state where it's called inflammation,
Okay.
where the body attempts to repair the tissues,
Right.
and it swells up.
I see.
So
Yes.
what you do is they ask to apply ice to reduce the swelling,
Okay.
which will help the injury get better quickly in the long run.
Right.
Now, when you apply ice, there's a specific way.
Okay.
You don't apply ice directly on skin,
Okay.
and it should be not more than 10 minutes at a time.
Okay.
We see what you get called ice burn if you do more than that.
Yeah.
We've seen a fair amount of Sri Lankans doing this.
What is an ice burn?
Ice burn is if you apply the ice for more than 10 minutes, it burns the skin. It's like a
dear.
normal burn.
Wow.
So do actually people keep rubbing
Yeah.
ice for 10 minutes?
Yeah, you keep rubbing it or keep
do
it on for 10 minutes, and then you stop and wait for about 3 hours and do the next session.
Right.
But if you do it for about an hour, you get something like ice
Obviously.
burn.
Right, okay.
And the next thing they say is to compress it. So if it's ankle, you put a strapping on.
Right.
That is also to prevent the swelling. And they say to elevate it, especially if it's a lower limb part.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that is a basic thing that you should do with an acute injury.
Right. Why is it that we use like ice instead of heat? Why not something that would? Is heat a bad idea if you're using? like,
In an acute injury,
Right.
when you put heat, what happens when you get these acute injuries? What we are trying to prevent is swelling.
okay.
Because swelling, they say, hampers the healing process.
Okay.
If anyone has had a big ankle sprain, they will know how much the ankle
Yeah.
swells up.
Yes.
And if you get a lot of swelling, it will take much longer for it to heal.
Right.
So by putting ice, compressing, you attempt to prevent the swelling. Actually, there's another mnemonic for what you shouldn't do. They call it harm.
Harm.
So
Okay.
heat, alcohol, massage, those things they say they should be avoided in the
To
first
be avoided,
in
even
the first
massage?
in the first 72 hours of injury.
Right.
And
No, because some people tend to, fix things by massaging the muscle,
Generally, the massage comes after the first 72 hours.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But there are
Yes.
certain people who just run into the whole thing, and so I'm glad that you actually mentioned that, because even I tried to do that once.
I mean, we've all sprained our ankles.
Sprained ankles, exactly. So
Me just being clumsy, I just walked down a couple of steps and
yeah. So usually, how long does it take for an acute injury to be healed, especially the inflammation part?
This is 72 hours. Actually,
72
you
hours.
mentioned the 72 hours as the golden hour.
Right. Okay.
And if you get the swelling down and treat it properly in the first 72 hours, the return to play is much quicker. When we speak of injuries, the most important thing is when the athlete returns to play.
Of course, yeah.
So if you have an injured, say a knee or this thing, you have to be fully fit to go back to play. So
Right.
that's what is different from managing normal day-to-day injuries athlete.
Okay.
Because the athlete has to perform at his functional best
Yeah.
when he returns.
Yeah.
So we speak of return to play times, and we are trying to minimize the return to play time by doing these things in the first
Right.
72 hours.
So wait, the recovery process, what does that include? Do they, for example, again, if you go back to ankle injuries, would you suggest that this person not walk at all, use a wheelchair, or do you stay in bed and rest for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week? What's the process?
It depends on the grade. When you take injury, there are different grades of the injury.
Right.
Now, when you speak of a joint, we have various structures. We have bones. In between the bones, we have cartilage. Then we have ligaments on the side to support it, and then there are muscles.
Yes.
So when we assess an injury, we assess each of these organs.
Right.
Now, if you have a bone fracture, the healing process is much longer.
Right.
So, but if you have a ligament sprain, it's less.
Okay.
And then the ligament sprains, we have grades. If you completely rupture ligament, again the time period is longer.
Okay.
So this is based on assessment where we examine the athlete. Sometimes we might do MRI or a further test, and then based now for a bad ankle sprain with a complete ligament tear, you're looking about 6 weeks of return to play.
Right.
Based on the sport.
Right.
But a fracture, you look at about 3 months. So.
Wow.
That
So,
is
so it depends on the grade of
long
the
time.
injury. That is a long time for a sportsman.
right.
Yeah.
Does the food that you consume, does that come into play when you have an injury?
Yes.
No, actually, when you have an injury, there are a lot of steps to return the player back. The first step is what we would say of resting, getting the swelling down.
Right.
The next step is to slowly mobilize that joint and to start strengthening the surrounding structures.
Okay.
It's a very rough way. And then you go on progressing, say the athlete will cycle, then he will go to a gentle jog, and then to run, then to sprints. So it takes a long time, and
Right.
you take it by step, by assessing the athlete weekly and returning the player back.
Brilliant. So we'll get back in detail about that. We'll be back with more Dr. Harindu Vijayasinghe on Good Morning Sri Lanka. But make sure if you did miss out on our previous episodes, you can search the keywords GMSL on YouTube and find our previous episodes and enjoy them. Like them, share them if you like. We'll be right back after this commercial break.